Hello, friends. We are continuing our discussion with what is God like in the context of this fallen world and suffering and pain and those things. Very difficult subject, and one that I confess that I don't have all the answers to. We will know when we move into eternity what the answers are to some of our questions. But certainly God has given us enough in terms of his scriptures and looking at his Son, how we are to respond and how we are to live on this fallen planet whilst really trusting and believing in him. So this is the fourth in the series, and the first one was just an introduction. The second one we spoke on the fall of man, of how God had given man this beautiful planet in which to live, and man had then forfeited the rightful of dominion in a sense. He was given control of this planet, and he then basically handed that over to the control of Satan through his free will. And the question was, well, then why did God do that? And we found that C.S. Lewis spelled it out quite nicely. I'll read his little explanation. And he said, for love to exist, there has to be an alternative. You can't love something if you don't have the alternative. Otherwise, you're just a robot or you're compelled to. So C.S. Lewis says, if a thing is free to be good, it is also free to be bad. And free will is what has made evil possible. Why then did God give free will? Because free will, though it makes evil possible, is also the only thing that makes possible any love or goodness or joy worth having. Love is more important to God than a perfect world. God is prepared for disorder and rebellion, and even pain and death in creation, if only there can be love. God does not control. No, much more wonderfully, God loves. Love does not control. Rather, it redeems and creates within the pain and joy of a world with freedom. The next session, we actually dealt with a very important subject, which is our understanding of the difference between God being sovereign and God being in control. So sovereignty, we found, it means that God ultimately, there is no higher authority, and God can do whatever he wants. And what he's done is he's given man the responsibility to live on this planet, and he's given man the handbook. He's told us how to live. But for love to exist, we found out that there needs to be the opportunity to reject God. And so God doesn't control. More importantly, he loves, and he desires for us to love. And love has a completely different worldview to the secular worldview. So we need to take responsibility for what is taking place on planet Earth, because God has given it to us to enjoy. And the decisions we make impact ourselves, and they actually impact others. So in a sense, what has happened is man is really just going after his own whims and really trying to self-satisfy himself. And yet, for those who love Jesus and have surrendered their lives to him, God has given us a way to navigate through this broken and fallen world and to make a difference while we're in it. So God doesn't lose any power. He just limits himself. And we see that with our own children. Is what we do is, as our children grow up, we give them greater and greater responsibility. And we don't keep stepping in and living their lives for them. We have to allow them the freedom of choice to be able to live their own lives. Otherwise, they would be robots in our own home. So it's so logical in a sense. So we can understand why bad things are happening on this planet, as man has made that decision to do things his way. And so God is always there, he's always appealing, and he's always enticing us to come back to him. So if you want to see what God is like, we just need to look at Jesus. We see throughout the scriptures the character of God is displayed. We see his goodness, we see the miracle-working God, we see his generosity, we see his mercy, we see his love. And we consider what God must think of this planet. I mean, God must weep at what is taking place in this planet, so much more than we do. And yet when things go wrong, we so often accuse him and blame him for the cruelty that is here on the planet. And that's because we assume that God should control it, that God should intervene all of the time on this planet. You see, when freedom is taken away, then dignity is lost as well. So God cannot take our freedom away without us either becoming robotic or losing our dignity altogether. And God refuses to move in as a dictator. So the best clue we have is how God feels about human pain is really to look at Jesus. And we're moved by that when we consider that Jesus in glory had everything. He wanted nothing, and he's not dependent on us in any way. And yet he came down to this planet. He lived as a man. He suffered acutely. He gave his life for us. Does that not display the love of God? And how is it that so often when we're going through hardship and pain and suffering and we have a loss of life and those things, we actually blame God or we accuse God? One of the biggest problems is we continue to ask the question why, and I'm going to deal with that in another session. There's no real difficulty in reasoning why, but actually we need to move on from that because we're not always going to get all of the answers. But as I say, I'll discuss that in another episode. We see here that whilst we're living on earth, the rain falls on the just and the unjust together. So we're living on a fallen planet. It's broken. The decisions people are making impact us. We don't always have complete control over our lives. We do have control over the decisions we make day to day and how we're going to live it. But whilst we're on this earth, hardship will befall the Christian and the non-Christian as well. So what I'd like to do is read to you from Romans 3 verses 7 and 8, where people would blame God for doing an evil thing so that good would come out of it. We find from the fact that we believe God almost to be like a terrorist. So if bad things happen and we blame God for it, we could say that God is actually behaving like a terrorist, because what a terrorist would do is he would cause bad things to happen so it would get attention that good may come out of it, or good as he perceives it would come out of the thing. And we often blame God for doing things, and then we say, well, God has done that so that we can that good can come out of it, or that I would love him more. Remember, I gave you the illustration of the broken leg. I mean, how ridiculous do we get? So if he caused a disaster, that something good may come of it, Paul says, you might as well say that if my untruthfulness serves to call attention to God's truthfulness, and so gives God glory, I shouldn't be blamed for it. This would be like saying, do evil that good may come of it. Some do accuse me of saying that, but they are to be censured. So my simple philosophy is that if bad things happen, then I look at John 10:10. The thief comes but to kill, steal, and destroy, and Jesus has come that he might give us life and life more abundantly. So my philosophy is that bad things happen because you're living on a fallen world. The devil is rife here. We saw in 1 John 5:19 how the whole world lies in the control of the evil one. 2 Corinthians 4:4, very similar. And so my philosophy is that when bad things are happening, and they happen to me, as I say, I've had cancer, we've lost a child, we've been through so much. And yet within that, I look to Romans 8:28, and if I can read that to you as well. Romans 8:28. Quickly go there. Romans 8:28. And that says, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. So good things can come out of it. God didn't create the bad things so that good would come. But what we as Christians do is we hold on to God, we appeal to God, and we draw down from God, trusting that within this thing, good will come out of it. Now, I'm trying to keep these videos limited in time, and I find I really just get started and then I have to wind down. So we've basically done a summary of what we've done before, and what we're going to do is now move on to the question of faith in all of this. Where do we stand in our faith? So may God richly bless you, and we'll chat again.